it again, execute it again, and again capture the metrics, and we'll review. If it is under the controls, then only we'll approve to move the code from one environment to other environment. Okay, to do all these things, we have to log the queries. Okay, so we'll see how we will query the logging facility, and how we'll capture the metrics, and how we can review as per the common standards. The standards may be different for each organization based on the configurations what they have. So we'll see some basic standards. So the Dbql is the feature that is used to log historical query information. Okay, so whatever query, a number of times when you execute, every time it will capture the query along with its performance in terms of different statistics. Okay, so that you can compare when it was executed yesterday with this much data, how much resource it occupied, and today with this much data, how much resource it has utilized. So when we execute all the queries, first they will be stored in the cache memory, and then it will be logged into the data dictionary tables which are related for capturing the Dbql outputs. So not intended for live review of the queries and query steps. It is not to observe what the current resource utilization by the current sessions or current SQLs. It is after capturing everything, maybe periodically, maybe every day at the end of the day, or maybe every week you will do the proactive review of the performance of the queries, and then you will suggest them. Okay, in production, if it is a production environment, what we do, we monitor them at every end of the day, how the application queries perform today. Is everything is under control or not? Okay. As space is increasing, is there anything which will go beyond the thresholds? Okay, those things will monitor after capturing the queries in fixed frequencies. Okay. If you want to do a live session management, we have to go with the performance monitor, okay, which give us how many number of sessions currently running, okay, what resources the sessions are utilizing, and which session is blocking what. All those details, the current health of the machine, can be found in the performance monitor. Okay, so the query logging is after capturing, you will do a periodical review of the queries. It is not for the current use of the sessions and queries, but the performance monitor is used for that purpose, to see the current health of the machines. We'll see that later. And the logging is invoked and revoked via SQLs. How we have added access logging, begin access logging. In a similar way, we have the syntax begin query logging. And after we capture all the required metrics, and if you want to end that, you can use end query logging, so that no such queries will be logged. So by default, one row per query is logged that contains user ID information and some statistics for that query. Once you start the query logging by the user, or as per the object, or as per the accesses what the user does on the objects, a row for each that particular event is captured till you give the end query logging. So we have to be careful what type of queries you want to log. It may not be all the queries by all the users, so we have to refine your begin query with the user IDs, the object names, or if you want to get some more information of each step level information or each object referenced in the SQL information, all those information we have to prepare, and then you start your begin query logging, so that each and every event will be logged into the DBC query log tables. So Dbql views have numerous columns which are changed in Teradata 12. Okay, here in DBS control options, there is one parameter called Dbql flush rate. Okay, this is a parameter, and these are configured at the time of Teradata configuration again. Okay, with the tool called DBS control. DBS control options. Okay. In the DBS control option, one of the parameters is Dbql flush rate, which determines how frequently the cache memory to be inserted into the database dictionary Dbql tables. Yeah. So it determines how frequently the cache will be flushed into the Dbqls. The default is 10 minutes generally. You may change it so that you can have less IO operations by increasing this number of time, or if the spool is consuming more, then you may give less frequency, so that every 5 minutes with less pool of memory it can flush into the Dbql tables. Okay. So all the SQLs can track. The key use of this is to track all the SQLs. The tpump queries can also be tracked. So tpump is one of the utilities, it's a legacy utility nowadays many people are not using. Yes, those SQLs can also be tracked. So Teradata 12 feature is capture number of rows loaded by fast load and multi-load. It won't capture the queries executed by fast load and multi-load, but it will capture the number of rows processed by the fast load and multi-load. It is the new edition from Teradata 12 onwards. And users who are granted execute permission on the following macros can do the begin query logging and end query logging. So what is that macro? The Dbql access macro. So this is the macro which the user should have access on, or the DBA should have access on, so that he can start the begin query logging. So initially the DBC has this access and he would give the access to sysdba, and then sysdba will grant this access to the other application DBAs, so that they can start query logging on the objects or by the users, whoever he is interested to track. And along with the normal information logged, we can specify some flags which can help us to log some more detailed information about the SQLs. And all this detailed information is stored in different query log tables. So these are the set of tables which are used to populate the events occurred based on the begin query logging, what you do. That is the rules, what you define with the begin query logging. As per the rule, whatever events happen, those events are tracked in this group of tables based on the options what we give. For example, there is the query log. This is the normal table which tracks every event. Once you give the begin query logging, the rule will be placed in the rules table and the events are placed in the query log table. It stores all default rows. Okay, so these are the tables and these are the views defined on those tables. Okay, so all the information is stored here whenever a event matched with the rule happen. Now you not only want to track the event, but along with that you want to see each and every step of the explain plans. Okay? Each and every step executed in the SQL. Then you can give an option with steps so that the information is stored in the query log steps. And if you want to log a row for each object, then you can specify that option so that for each and every object what you refer in the query, it will track one row here. It will log one row in the query log objects. And if you want to store the SQL with full text, there is an option. So once you use that option, the total SQL text is captured in query log SQL. This Dbql SQL table. And if you have some threshold in terms of the CPU or in terms of the IO, you can mention those thresholds so that it will see if those thresholds are met or not, and if those met, those particular rows only captured in summary tables. Okay, in summary, it will capture, let's suppose you have a threshold like 30k CPU cycles. Okay, and if there are few SQLs which are beyond the threshold, it will log the event in such a way there are 5 SQLs today which are beyond 30k CPU cycles. Like that, it would give a summary. Based on the threshold what you set, it will give the count of the SQLs which are beyond those threshold today. Okay, that is the Dbql summary. And along with the SQL, if you want to track the explain plan, you can give the option so that along with the SQL, along with the normal statistics and metrics, it will log the explain plan also in the Dbql explain table. Okay. So these are some more additional views. Query log events, where the workload management activities would go beyond these. It will log the events, log exceptions. So these are frequently used, the Dbql related tables. Okay. It is a normal table which logs each and every event, and it logs each and every step level information. So one row for each step in the SQL, and then one row for each object, one row with the complete SQL text. If the SQL text is very much huge, then it may occupy 2 or 3 rows also based on the SQL length. And then query log summary, where it will give the number of rows which would go beyond the thresholds what you define. Yeah, and it stores the explain plans. So this is the syntax for query logging. Begin query logging with what all options you want to give. Yeah, with query text, or with explain plan, or with steps, with objects. Yeah, whatever option you want to give, you can give here with logging options. Yeah, and you can give the limits, where the summary option would require this limit options, so that if the, for example, you give a CPU cycle, so limit CPU cycle 300 something. Yeah, the limit options you can give here. You can give multiple options also, 2, 5, 6, 30. So it will give you the number of rows, okay, which occupied 2 CPU cycles, or after 2 it is 5. So 5 cycles, more than 5 cycles, and 6 cycles, and then 30 cycles. Like that you can give more options. We'll see those examples. Then on which users
Manoj,
you want to track. Yeah.
can you zoom in a little bit, please? I am.
Okay. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you.
Okay. So begin query logging with the options, different options, and give the limit. Okay. The limit option could be on IOs, could be on CPUs, you can mention, and you can give the limit options. If you specify CPUs here, then you will give 3 or 4 CPU cycles, so that it will give the summary of counts which hit those CPU cycles or IO cycles. And then on all users or any particular user queries only you want to track. Yeah. And even with this user, if you want to track only for a particular account IDs what he has, okay, only high priority users queries for so and so user I want to track. Okay, then you can use is account string for which you want to track, and the user name for which user you want to track, or you may give all, so that all users queries will be logged. So it is better you refine your rule. Otherwise many rules, many events will happen, and more rows will be inserted into the log tables, and it is difficult for you to analysis. Okay, so you choose which particular user you want and which particular account you want to track for that particular user, so that the number of queries logged will be less and you can do the analysis easily.
What do you mean by account name?
Account is the priority string which we defined at the time of user ID creation.
Oh, as
Dollar,
in like $H
yeah,
and L.
$H, $M, $L, and
So
$R.
it's just a string. It's not a name really. No.
The account name is the combination of account and the account string expansion. Yes,
Okay, that whole string is the account name then.
yeah, the whole string is called as account name.
Oh,
Account name is combination of the account, priority account, and the account string expansion with which you want to track. So this is the use of the account string expansion. Because if they are belong to one application, if you want to track the information at the application level, if you use that account string expansion while creation of that particular user, this is the benefit where you can aggregate the application level resources what they consume. So
I've
here,
also seen account ID when I try to log in. What is that? Is there anything called account ID also in this in Teradata environment?
both are same: account ID, account name, account string expansion, everything refer to that.
Okay, okay, okay.
And so you can give with options so that you can track more information and the related objects will be populated whatever options you give with option. By default, 200 characters of SQL is logged in the normal query log table, and if you want to track the complete SQL executed by the users, then you have to use with SQL option so that the SQL will be logged into the SQL table. Okay, so in the query log, you will see the query, but it is limited to 200 characters. But you want to track the complete SQL, then you will give a with option in the SQL here with SQL, so that it will store the SQL also in the query log. Okay, if you say with objects, then the objects information is also stored in the log objects. For each object, one row but that query. Like that, you can use with options and the limit options, and you can log how much information you want for that particular user or for that particular query. For example, here you can see the begin query logging. We are not using any with options, limit options here. Begin query logging on the user IDs. So you want to log all the queries executed by these two users because they requested you to review the metrics. So you have logged their queries, and whatever application they run, all the queries will be logged and they will pull the metrics and will give it to you so that you can review the metrics. So this creates two rules, one for each specified user. Till you execute end query logging, all the events of these users will be logged. There is one more example where you want to track one production user whenever he logs in with the low level and the medium level priorities. For a single user, but only two account strings you want to track. And this is the with options. What are possible with options? You can give with all, means all the information you want to track. So all the related query log tables are populated. What all tables? Again, these all tables will be populated if you give with all. So you want to log the objects, you want to log the explain plan, you want to log the steps, you want to log each object referred with complete SQL text, everything. Or if you want to track only the explain plans, you can give with explain, so that the explain related table, that is Dbql explain, will be populated. If you give with objects, the object table will be populated. If you give with SQL, the complete SQL, the Dbql SQL table is populated, or step info. So this is an example. Begin query logging with objects and SQL on the user. Here we are tracking for all. So default rows are logged, as well as the complete SQL text and the objects used in the query are also logged. Even though the complete SQL text is captured in Dbql SQL table, the default row still has the first 200 bytes of the SQL text. So it will just help us to recognize what SQL it is, but it won't hold the complete SQL. It will be truncated for 200 bytes or 200 characters, you can say. Yeah. And if you want to see the complete SQL, you have to log the complete SQL with an option so that it will be captured in the Dbql SQL table. Okay. So there will be a common key generated for the normal query log table and the SQL table, so that you can join that and can fetch the query. So there is the master and primary and foreign key relation. It is not physically implemented, but it is logically the relation between two tables where you can join them and capture all the related information. Okay. Explain plan. We know explain plan, right? Raj, you are asking explain plan? Okay, once you write the query, if you give F6 instead of F5 to execute, it will give you the explain plan. So that plan is tracked in the plan table, Dbql explain plan. Okay. So with all option again. So here the limit options. After with, the next option is limit. So in limit, you can give the SQL text, specify the amount of SQL text to be captured in the default row. Default row means Dbql log table. Okay. Generally, by default, it occupies 200. But if you want to increase or decrease a bit in the SQL text, which is logged in the log table, you can verify it. If you give 0, no SQL is captured in the normal table, and maximum you can give up to 10,000 characters. Okay. And then limit summary. You can see the example, you can better understand. If I give a limit summary of the CPU cycles like this, 5, 6, 600. Okay, so it will log the information with these three values, and the fourth value is automatically the greater than 600. So the queries which are in this range and in this range and in this range and the above the range, everything are logged with the count, because it gives summary. So how many queries executed with this many number of CPU cycles? 5 queries within less than or equal to 5, 10 queries within less than or equal to 60, 15 queries less than or equal to 600, and 20 queries greater than 600. Like this, each threshold will give you a summary row store. Then logging limit thresholds. If you give threshold, the query which is greater than the 60 seconds will be logged. If your query runs for less than or equal to 60 seconds, that is 1 minute, increment the count. If your query runs longer than 1 minute, log a default row. Okay. So if it is executed within 1 minute, then just count it. Okay, this is the query which is executed within 1 minute. And let's suppose we have 100 queries today. Okay, it will count how many queries are executed within 1 minute. For example, 90 queries executed within 1 minute. So it will give a count for those queries which are executed within 1 minute. The rest of the 10 queries, it will log the complete information, because it has beyond the threshold. So we are not only capturing it in the counts, but we want to capture the whole information of those 10 queries which are beyond this threshold. So if you give threshold, within the threshold, it just count those sequels. How many number of sequels happened within these thresholds today? If they are beyond the threshold, it will start capturing the complete information of the sequel. So after with options, you can give limit options, and again this limit, summary and threshold are cannot be given together. Either you give limit or either you give either you give summary or either you give threshold. Both cannot be given together. And once you completed a track and analyzed, and if you want to stop logging of those particular events, so this is the end query logging on the users and the accounts. So it is a counter of the begin query logging. It should be in the same format how you started the begin query, so that it will close that particular rule from the rules table and it won't capture the events then onwards. So this is end query logging on all, or end query logging for a particular user, or end query logging for a particular user for a particular account. Yeah, so however way you open the begin query, you have to close it in the same way, so that the rule will be closed. And this is the rule table. So whenever you define with the begin query logging, the rule is defined and can be seen in the Dbql rules view. So these are the columns in the view: username, okay, whose events we have to log, okay, if any particular account we have to log, the explain flag is yes or not, okay, object flag, okay, it is true or false flags. If it is T, that means it has to track the explain flags based on the rule what you have given in the begin query logging. If you give with explain, then this explain flag will be shown as T, like this. If you give with objects, then the object flag will be shown as true. The remaining flags will be false. Like that, you can see the rule of each user, okay, what type of queries and with what information we want to log. You can query this view with a query like this: the username, account string, SQL flag, threshold flag, the summary values, and this is the sample result. So first rule is all users who logged in with high priority, for them, okay, the text of SQL to be tracked is 200, and we don't want any other extra information to be tracked. For example, if you consider one more row, for this particular user, I want to track the low level and medium level priority account IDs, okay, along with the normal SQL text 200, and I don't want to track anything else. And if the 5 user, I want to track his threshold flags. The threshold flag is set. The summary values 200. Okay, if the 200 CPU cycles met, within 200 it will be counted. After 200 it will be tracked completely with all options. Like that, you can view the rules table and identify what are rules are defined currently. And this is the query log view, which helps us to find the events happened as per the rules defined. Okay, there are so many columns here, we'll see that. And this is a sample query, whatever important columns you want to track: POC ID, session ID, username, query ID, user ID. So all IDs will be given in the query log, so that you can join it with the other tables also related to the query logging. And this is a row. You can see spool usage for this query, the time taken by the query. Okay. And you can see the CPU also. There are some other columns, and this is the query text. Okay. And you can do through Teradata administrator. The query logging and access logging you can do through queries, or you can go through the administrator options. You'll see that. So we'll see some examples and exercises where you can also practice. Any questions, anyone? What is this topic all about? Is to capture the query performances and to take proper decisions in terms of optimizations or in terms of movement of the SQLs from the upper environments. And if it is in production, monitoring the SQL performance each day, okay, whichever run as batch, the batch process. Let's see the SQL options, and I will show you the administrator, how we can do this through administrator also. Login with admin. So yesterday we have seen the access logging examples here, and now this is the query logging example. So initially, if you see the rules view, there are no rules defined, 0 rules. And now I wanted to start logging the DBC user events with SQL. Begin query logging with SQL on the user DBC. I can make it as all, or I can make it as TD user. If I make it TD user, then I have to log in as a TD user and I have to do some events so that it will be captured. So let's make it as DBC and see whatever events I do as a DBC, everything will be captured. See, now if you see the rules populated in the Dbql rules table, DBC logging enabled, and what all options I have given? Only the SQL text. The normal size here in the normal table is 200, and the complete SQL I need to capture in the SQL. Okay. So now whatever event I do, they will be captured. As a DBC I have logged in, so now if execute some SQLs like this, whatever. So normal, okay. Normal events. The financial employee I'm trying to access. Show table I'm trying to do. So executed some queries, and all these events to be captured the query log. So it will take some time. Still there are 0 rows. So the default threshold is 10 minutes. Okay, within 10 minutes. Let's suppose if the 9th minute of the previous run I started executing the queries, within 1 minute you can see the reflections in the Dbql. Okay, if just now it has flushed and now you started the query, you have to wait for 10 minutes. So that is the variation. Sometimes you may see it very quickly, sometimes you may need to wait for 10 minutes. Why? Because there is a thread which runs every 10 minutes which flushes all the information into the DBC tables. So that's where sometimes you may have to wait for more time, sometimes you may have to wait for less time because of the time when it has previously executed. Let's say the role it still exists. Yes. Okay. So meanwhile, we'll see Teradata administrator how we can do these options. Okay, Teradata admin, just log in, and in tools option, you can see the create, not create here. Separately, in the tools option, we have access logging and query logging. If you click on access logging, it will give you a pop-up. You have to select. If you want to select a particular database, select the database what you want to log. And if you want to select a particular object, select the particular type of object, it will give you those objects. So let's suppose we want to capture the access logging of retail customer table. In the retail database customer table, I can select only this object. And users, if you want to capture all the events, all the user events on the cust table, you can select all here. Otherwise, deselect, it will give you the usernames. You can select particular user so that any particular user is doing actions on the customer table of retail, then that particular row is captured. So you are refining our logging information. If I give all, then whichever user accessing this table, it will be captured. Okay, for example, if this is a very confidential table and no one should have access on this, so I will do all users, so that whoever user try to access this object, it will be logged. Or if I want to capture some group of users only, then you select only those particular users so that it will capture only those users event on this object. Yeah. You want to capture only the denials or all, you can select this. So let's suppose whenever they are rejected from accessing this table, those particular event to be captured along with the SQL what they execute on the table. First attempt only or last attempt or each attempt you want to capture, and what type of queries to be captured. If they execute select queries or insert queries or update queries, so whatever action you want to capture, you can give. If you give all the options will be tracked. Otherwise, give some particular action and click on the begin log table, begin log button here. It will give you the SQL just to be executed. Begin logging denials with text on each means the attempt, each attempt, the first attempt, last attempt, or first or last, and both, or each select operation, each insert operation, each update operation by these users on the table retail.cust. Okay, so detailed rule is logged into the rule table, and then each event is logged, then you can track it. And if you want to end logging, okay, better whenever you do the begin, you do the end logging also and keep this SQL ready with you, so that later you can use this SQL to end log. Because while begin you give some rules, and by end logging, if you don't give the same rule, it may not be ended. So it is a best practice, whenever you do the begin log, you execute the begin log, but try to get the end log SQL and store it somewhere, so that if you want to end it, you can end it with the query which is generated at the time of begin itself. Otherwise, it is difficult to remember what all options we selected here. Okay, you may have to do analysis, what all options there in the begin logging, and try to correlate what all options you have to select in the end logging here. So better.
So Manohar, that will get by clicking display, right? What we did for begin logging.
No, begin log. See here, to execute, to display the SQLs, you have to enable this button here. You see in the toolbar we have a button here, the spectacles.
Yeah.
Okay, you just click on this, so that before execution of this, it will generate the SQL.
Yes, yeah, but whatever the options we choose for enabling, we can choose by clicking the display button to end log.
Not completely actually. Okay, so here,
Not completely. Okay.
yeah, if you select user, okay, you may select one user here.
Like user access. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
like user creation, we give the access, right?
yeah, for user creation, for granting accesses, it is right, because if you want to see the access rights what this user has on this particular database, you can try display it. It will display all the options here. But here in the query logging and access logging, while begin logging you selected 3 users, for example, okay, and now I closed it. After few days, I just want to end query logging. I will go here, so nothing is displayed here, right? So I have to remember what objects I have given, or I know only one user for which we have given this end logging, and I want to display. Okay, it will display the query how you can get the rules defined on this particular user, but not the entire query logging statement what you created at the time of beginning the query log. Okay, so it is difficult. I mean, whatever users you selected, whatever options you selected, those things are not displayed here. This is a bit different than the grants access. Okay, so better, okay, instead of doing all this analysis,
yeah, kind of mandatory.
Hmm.
But yeah, better to get that query.
Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, if you forget what all users you selected, okay, in begin query you can see anyway the rule table, and you can see, and so you have to select each and every user and display and get all this information and then assemble that end logging SQL. Instead of that, better, because of the experience, it is better you get the end query logging also at the time of begin logging itself, so that you can simply fire the query without doing much analysis how to end this query.
Okay. Yeah.
So that is the access logging, and similar way you can do the query logging. Query logging will give this type of pop-up where you can give the information. So for all users you want to query log, or if you want to select any particular user, you select that user, and if you want to give any accounts of that particular user, give those account strings or account names or account IDs here, and the log information with objects you want. Okay, no logging, you don't want to log anything, only the general things. And if you want to log anything else, you just unclick it and choose whatever with options you want, or everything. So this all with all. And SQL length you can change here. This is the default length which is captured in the normal log table. You can increase it to 10,000, or you can make it 0 if you don't want anything, because you are capturing the SQL text also in the SQL table, so you may not capture SQL here, or for just for correlation you may use some less number. So SQL length 100 and threshold You can use 5 elapsed seconds or 5 CPU seconds or 5 CPU normal seconds, normalized seconds. These are some characteristics, the statistics of the query. The CPU cycles, IO cycles, and elapsed time. These are frequently used. The thresholds. So if you click on the begin logging, it will give you the begin query logging. Query. Begin query logging, limit SQL text 100 and the threshold file elapsed on the first user. So that the first user queries are logged with the SQL text 100 and with the threshold 5. So within the 5 it will give the counts, and after the 5 it will give the complete log information. Okay. So here also you better take the end query logging. Let's see our SQL. It should have some logs captured by now. See, these are all options, these are all operations I did after I defined my rule on DBC. All are today only, right? 12/6, and this is the timing, query ID, log on dates, times, source, start time and end time. So these are the statement types. These are the sequels I have executed. What all are these? If I execute the threaded administrator, it will execute some default SQLs, the DBs, to fetch the data into the tool. All those sequels also logged here. Maximum AMP level CPU it has taken. So see the statistics here. Maximum AMP level IOs on each AMP. How much maximum AMP level IO I have used for this query, and the spools I used for these queries. So many parameters. So generally we see the CPU, elapsed times, IO, and these are maximum and minimum. We don't see this. You see? Yeah.
So when I say spool uses 1536, what does it mean? Is how many is
kilobytes? Bytes. In terms of bytes, you have to calculate it by giving the calculation by 1024. Will convert into KBs. I mean MBs, and then by one more 124 will give you in GBs. By default, it is bytes, number of bytes.
Same thing with the AMP IOs. We use like AMP how many AMP in?
Yeah, IOs, it is cycles. 57 IO cycles it used. It is not bytes.
So it means we did 57 input output from the AMP.
Yeah, from this AMP, the 57 cycles of IO cycles are consumed. The maximum is 59, the minimum is 57, so average would be some 56 around. So IO's queue is less because all the amps are worked almost parallel.
Okay.
So here it is 72 and 12, so the skewness is heavy.
Skewness is heavy, okay.
So sometimes based on the queries what you fire on the tables and the table distributions, it will happen because it is very small table now, Dbql rules. So there is only one row, and to access one row, 1 amp is enough. The other amp will stay idle. So that's where it is very huge queue. Okay. As it is a small table, you can understand it. 1 amp is working heavy and other amp is not working heavy. It's fine because it is a small table and it has only one row, and number of amps are more than the number of rows than it would expect it. Okay, that's where they will give a waiver. I mean, even the thresholds are defined, like IOSQ should be this much. It depends on different parameters, like the table size here, for example. If the table size is very less and the skew is heavy, then it is accepted, like that.
Okay, so when we say we optimize the query, so we have to reduce this number of IOs, right? So it can use less resources.
For example, if it is a very much big table and the skew is like this, then we will ask them to optimize it.
Okay.
If it is a small table, yes, you can understand. If you know the architecture now, how the data is distributed. Okay, if it is a very small table, for example, we have 3000 amps in the configuration, and in the table I have only 200 rows. Then you can understand the skew level is heavy, right? Obviously, because the number of rows are less than the number of amps exist. So you cannot ask them to optimize it, or they can do that.
Okay.
Okay. So if the table is very size and its the skew level is high, then you can ask them to choose a correct primary index so that you will get the complete distribution.
Okay.
So like this you can track the information. So here you can see the CPUs, the total IO count. There you have seen the average, the maximum, minimum and averages. Here you can see the total for each query, how much total CPU it has impacted. I'm getting noise, can you be mute if you're not asking questions? So the time taken, I'm still getting noise. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is how. So now I want to close this event. What I will do? The corresponding counter end query logging on DBC. So if I click on this, it will end this rule. Okay, as I said, the rule should be very much in sync whenever you do the begin and end. So best way and the best option is prepare your end query also at the time of begin query and store it, so that once you've done with your analysis, you can execute the end query. Otherwise, it will be difficult to prepare the end query logging after that. So now I have executed the end query logging. Now there should not be any rule exist in the rule table. See, it is 0 rows. But the logs which were already captured, they would exist here. So how I can delete it? You provided access, you can delete the log table. Delete from DBC, Dbql log table. It has deleted 20 rows. Now everything is fine. Now if you want to do one more logging, I can do begin query logging with SQL on TD user. And if you want to see the rule, now the rule defined on TD user on everything. I mean on SQL only. And after capturing, you can end query logging. See the rule? No rules. And the same things you can do to the administrator, which it will create the SQLs for you simply. But the base SQLs are same. Whatever options we have seen, the same options, same limits, same threshold, same width options, everything can use here in the tools, where it will generate the SQL simply. Okay. Any questions?
So do they have any different utility to like a view